Now we talked about the vision, but the important thing is how is Citrix going to execute on that vision? How are they going to go from XenDesktop today into converting them into that cloud architecture? How are they going to do it? What are the phases? What are some of these projects that you constantly hear about mean? This is again where I'm going to equip you with the knowledge of what is going on within Citrix so that as these projects are, you're hearing of them, you don't have to go out and Google, but you're understanding the vision and how Citrix is going to execute on that vision. So the way they're going to do that is via a project called Project Avalon. If you've heard of Project Avalon and you didn't know what it meant, well, get ready. You are going to today. Project Avalon is made up of essentially two projects, which we're going to talk about, but it's essentially delivering Windows apps and desktop as a cloud service. Now, is that enough to deliver Windows apps and desktop as a cloud service? I talked about the difference between a cloud service, which is not only the cloud products that Citrix offers, but also re-architecting existing products around cloud architectures. So is it enough? The answer is no. So Citrix not only wants to deliver Windows apps and desktops as a cloud service, they want to do that as a mobile cloud service, which means you can access them from any mobile device and connect to that cloud service on the back end. So if I was to summarize what Citrix's vision is, and this is my quote, I would say Citrix is cloudifying and mobilizing XenApp and XenDesktop. If we're going to break it down to what essentially Citrix is trying to do, it's cloudifying and mobilizing XenApp and XenDesktop. Because when you cloudify XenApp and XenDesktop around that architecture, and you're mobilizing it, which means you are creating Citrix Receiver and you're creating all the enhancements that we're going to talk about inside of Citrix Receiver so that the existing Windows applications and desktops can be accessed in a user-friendly way on mobile devices, well, you're essentially just cloudifying and mobilizing XenApp and XenDesktop. That's to simplify it. Now, if we go back to Project Avalon, so again, this is the redesign of XenDesktop around cloud architecture, which means we're going to create on-demand self-service. We're going to have cloud scale orchestration. So what does cloud scale orchestration mean? Well, cloud scale orchestration means not only in a single geography, you're able to orchestrate worldwide against maybe public clouds or even private clouds or a mixture of both. So global, multi-site, multi-tenant management. I might have a single organization that has multiple sites, maybe a North American site, maybe a European site, or an Asian site. But I could also be a service provider that's trying to create a multi-tenant. Again, I gave you the example of a school district that maybe is trying to become that service provider for other school districts. Well, you don't necessarily want their information to intermingle with yours, but you want to have that multi-tenancy so that you have separation of management as well. Rapid elasticity. Again, I want to be able to scale up, scale down. I want to be able to burst. All of these are cloud characteristics that we are now trying to build inside of XenDesktop. I also want measured and metered services so that if I'm a cloud service provider and I have a tenant, I can meter that tenant and then build them according to what they're using, as opposed to giving them, well, I'm just going to provision 200 virtual machines and this is how much you're going to pay me every month or every year. No, I'm going to measure you. I'm going to meter you based on how much you are using, and then I'm going to send you a bill accordingly. All of these are cloud characteristics, which is why I say the redesign of XenDesktop around cloud architecture principles. So Project Avalon is divided into two sub-projects. There's Project Excalibur and then there's Project Merlin. Project Excalibur is, in simple terms, the unification of XenApp and XenDesktop and the introduction of certain enhancements to HDX, and HDX is the high definition experience. Again, this is the plugins, the enhancements, the ICA that make it a high definition experience. So technically nobody uses the term ICA anymore. It's evolved into HDX. So if you're seeing and starting to hear about HDX, it's simply an enhanced version of ICA. So Project Excalibur was XenDesktop 7, or that was the first phase, which is XenDesktop 7, which unified a lot of the service delivery models, XenApp, XenDesktop, etc. And we'll talk about what else could potentially be introduced also. It's also bringing HDX for mobile and video, which means typically if you put a published application on a mobile device, it's still a Windows application. So you still have to zoom and pinch and scroll up and scroll down in order to tap what you're trying to tap on the screen. With HDX for mobile, now we are taking that application. When we add the HDX stuff to it, it's automatically going to start making it a lot more mobile friendly. So if it detects a form, you click on that form, it automatically brings up, for instance, the keyboard. It will zoom. It gives you a little more flexibility in terms of, well, how do I navigate some of these environments? So a lot more, and I'll show you that. So it makes it a lot more mobile friendly. Real-time analytics, support for Windows Server 2012 and beyond, and Windows 8 and beyond. So all of that came through Project Excalibur. Now, obviously, during this course, the focus is going to be on Project Excalibur, but I also want you to be aware of Project Merlin. So Project Merlin is that self-service provisioning management and service orchestration that we have on the back end. So this is how you scale XenDesktop. So we're going to be focusing in this course around the installation of XenDesktop, around how we manage XenDesktop, everything that has to do with the front end of XenDesktop. Project Merlin is that back end of XenDesktop. How do we provide that self-service provisioning so that administrators have the ability of, orchestrating the scale up and scale down of these environments? How do we leverage essentially cloud architectures from multiple different cloud service providers in order to do this? How do we mix and match different essentially releases of different products as well into that mix? So two very distinct projects. One is focused on the unification of the delivery services. Again, the delivery model, whether it's going to be VDI, whether it's going to be XenApp, published applications, local. We'll talk about all of those. And the other is more about the cloud architecture of XenDesktop. Now, when I say cloud architecture of XenDesktop, I want to make a distinction here. I'm not talking about the actual code enhancement to make it more cloud architecture-like. So in addition to XenDesktop code changing to make it a lot more cloud-like, well, we also have the tools on the back end which will allow the self-service provisioning, the orchestration of services, the deployment of those services. Those have nothing to do with essentially the code. That's the operational aspect of the cloud as opposed to the code itself being cloud-friendly. So Merlin deals with the operational aspects of cloudifying XenApp and XenDesktop, essentially.